right, everybody, welcome to NorCal Sports Network. And this is the same hat that Brock Purdy's dad wears. Chat loves it when Marty Lurie comes on.
Anytime you lose a game this time of year, when you can't go backwards, it's a problem.
All right, everybody, welcome on in NorCal Sports Network. Tonight we've got as our special guest Glen Kuiper, and we'll be talking Giants baseball. But before we get into that, let us thank our sponsor of this show, Chapman Law Group. Chapman Law Group, located in Marin, licensed in all of California. You got a personal injury situation, don't settle before you give Chapman Law Group a call. They're located at 415-613-9483. Let them know NorCal Sports Network sent you. They just don't cover personal injury, cover all legal matters, but specializing in personal injury. So make sure you give them a call. All right, Glenn, let's get this going. Giants off to a great start, 9-3. I mean, what can you say about a 9-3 start when a team has spent the last 3 seasons pretty much hovering right around the 500 mark? And like I said, they're a half a game behind San Diego, who's 9-2, and then you got the Dodgers sitting, I believe, at 10-4-ish or something of that nature. I was just going to pull up the standings here and see what it was here. Yeah, Giants are
they're
9-3. 10-4. So Giants winning 75% of their games. We know that's not going to continue, but great to get some kind of deposits in the bank a little bit, much. I mean, what would we be doing talking about right now if the Giants were 3-9? It would be like the sky is falling, right? Here they are, 9-3. Give us your take on the early season. We still got 150 games to go.
Well, obviously the record's great. I mean, it's always nice to start out strong. I mean, everybody says that. Players, coaches, front office. Of course, it's nice to start out, but it is obviously, very, very, very early. But what I look at, Dan, is, how are they playing, right? I mean, I think that's such a big thing with the Giants right now, because there is a new mentality and there were some changes made to how are we going to go about things, with Buster coming in and some new ideas and some new things to emphasize. So knowing that there was changes put in place, hoping that, the team would buy in, so to speak. And they did in spring training, and they worked on things that they weren't good at last year. And it worked in spring training. And I think we've seen some improvement in those areas in the early going. So yeah, we all look at the record, of course, but I just look at the games and how they're playing, right? And they're playing pretty clean baseball, which wasn't always the case last year. The starters, I like what the starters are doing. And I always think back, remember last year, Dan, there was a period of time where they had 2 starters, right? And that's crazy to think about. And it just seems like now they got 5 guys. They got young guys in the minor leagues that can come up if somebody gets hurt, legitimate guys. I mean, you got Kyle Harrison in AAA, right? So my point is I like the way they look. I like the way they play. Even the 2 games they lost to the Reds. Listen, Hunter Green's throwing 100 miles an hour in the 9th inning. Lodolo's very good. So you lose the game 2-0 and 1-0, but they didn't play bad baseball. They just didn't hit a lot because the pitching was good. But, so that's the way I'm looking at it, Dan. And I like what I see. The clutch hitting's been better. I thought the at-bats yesterday, in that the inning where they came back and tied the game or got close where they scored 4. I mean, I think about, Bailey going the other way and hitting a ball over the right fielder's head, and Fitzgerald. Oh, that was beautiful, right? He hits a line drive to right field, doesn't try to do too much on an off-speed pitch. So things like that. are encouraging. And so I like I like the way they're playing, and too, guys aren't going yet. Adamas is off to a slow start.
Right.
Wade's off to a slow start, and that'll switch. They'll get hot. A couple other guys will cool off, but all in all, they look to me in the very early going like a very good, solid team, and really that's what you want, right? I mean, everybody
Absolutely.
you want a team loaded to superstars, but that's not reality. Play good baseball, do the right things, and that's what they're doing.
You bring up some great points there, Glenn, because that's what I've been saying on this show. When they lost the second game the other night after being shut out 2 nights in a row, a lot of people were upset. I said, hey, look, it's going to happen in a season of 162. I like the way they're playing. Fundamentally sound baseball. I have only seen, we've seen about 3 errors in 12 games, which is great. And I've only seen like 2 or 3 mental mistakes, and I look at that. Like we saw the mental mistake of Randy Rodriguez not backing up home plate one on a base hit, and the tag, the run allowed the guy to go to second. There was that one. There was a mental error, really. Wilmer yesterday running, he's got to know De La Cruz has got a great arm.
Yeah.
And he's not very fleet-footed, Wilmer. So he was out by 30 feet.
Yeah.
And that was they were lead off. They had a guy on third, I think, that inning, with no outs, and they didn't end up scoring, I believe. That might have been I'm not sure. I may be confused. But just a couple little things like that you say, okay, we got to correct those. Physical errors, you can't really do anything about physical errors. They're going to happen in baseball. They're humans, but you got to be able to be thinking. And the Giants have done a good job this year playing sound, fundamental baseball. And I really like the way they've been, going to right field, like you mentioned, just getting that hit. And you mentioned Adames is off to a slow start, and they're still 9-3. So that's a plus. And Verlander hasn't really done too much in his 3 outings. He doesn't, I was impressed yesterday. He gave up the 5 runs in the third, but then he was able to come back and, pitch effective in the 4th and 5th innings, and got even into the 6th, wasn't able to get out of it. But, you saw some signs of it would have been pretty rough if he didn't get out of the 3rd inning for 2 games in a row.
Yeah, he'll be fine. I know people were, a little, because he got knocked out early opening day and then yesterday. But, I thought his stuff was pretty good yesterday.
He had 10 Ks or something?
Yeah,
yesterday?
9 strikeouts and a couple balls in that inning. One bounced over Wade's head. The other one was a slow roller to Chappie, one up the middle with the infield. And now he did walk a guy, and so that's, he was guilty there. But, I think Verlander's going to be fine. I mean, is he going to throw 200 innings? Probably not. But look at the big picture here. I mean, he had a really battle to get through that inning. I mean, he was tired, right? But he was able to go back out there and throw a couple more really good innings. And you just had a weird feeling in that game, like that they kept putting pressure on the Reds. And I think when you do that, Dan, even though sometimes it's frustrating because you're behind and then you miss a couple opportunities to score and you're like, oh man, but they kept putting pressure on. And that's what good teams do, because if you keep putting pressure on a team when you're behind, at some point you're probably going to break through with some runs. Now, you may not catch up all the way. Sometimes you do, like they did, but they kept coming back. That's the sign of a good team. So it's a lot of little things, Dan. And, like you mentioned Rodriguez, which is a perfect example. I saw it too, just like you did. And I was like, he's not backing up. That's bad.
Right.
But he got out of the inning. The not backing up didn't hurt him, luckily. But I bet it doesn't happen again, Dan.
Correct.
Because at some point, probably not right away in the dugout, maybe you wait till after the game, or maybe you wait till the next day. Somebody's going to talk to Rodriguez. He knows what he did wrong, but somebody's going to say, hey, come on now. You can't do that. And he's going to say, you're right. And I bet it doesn't happen again the rest of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then that's just that, that's the way it is. Sometimes guys make mistakes like that, and that is a mental mistake. You're right, and the fewer of those you have, the better. But if I always, when you think about mental mistakes too, Dan, I look at the individuals, okay, and the Giants, what they have put together here, and just watching these guys, they're smart baseball players, and smart baseball players don't make a lot of mental mistakes. They just don't. Chapman, I mean, we know what he's all about, right? Adames, we're watching Fitzgerald grow, right?
Right.
We're trying to get him to eliminate some of the mental mistakes he made last year. He's going to get better. Wade's a smart player. And when I say smart, there's just not a lot of those little mistakes. Lee is a perfect example of a guy who doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Yaz doesn't.
Yeah.
And then an example of a young player who needs to continue to get better in that area is Matos, because we've seen Matos the last couple of years. He's a very talented guy, but there are some mental mistakes made at the big league level. And I think that's something the Giants said, listen, young man, you got to eliminate these mental mistakes because you're very talented and we want you to be a big part of our future. So there's a young kid that is working to overcome that. And he's looked better to me in a short period of time, Mato. So, I think it has a lot to do with the players that you have. And remember what Buster said, I'm looking for specific kinds of players.
Right.
I'm not just looking for, I want that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy, because they all put up big numbers. Okay. Yeah. We all want that, right?
Right.
But he's
absolutely
looking for specific players who play the game the right way. And when you have a group of guys with talent who play the game the right way, you're going to be a good team. And that's what I think this group is.
It really is. I mean, I went to, living down here in Arizona, I went to the first opening practice. I think it was the 17th of February, if my memory serves me correctly. But I was watching the players. I was watching how they interacted. I was just, because I do this every year. So I noticed something different this year. Right away, it was evident to me that there was a different camaraderie of the players. There was a cohesiveness, a mindset that said, okay, we're here for business, but we're kind of loose. We're loose and we're going to have some fun. And I noticed that. And I said, as I watched them in spring training, the last 2 years, I pretty much said they were going to be, last year I said, this is not a 500 club. They're going to finish under 500 was my prediction. The year before, I think I said the same thing. This year, I've got them at 86 and 76 at the beginning. And I hope I'm underselling it. I hope they can, somehow overachieve that. But I definitely feel this team is on the right direction. And to me, Glenn, you've been around baseball a long time. You could sense a team, and you've been around Bo Mel with the A's for years. And I sensed a different Bob Melvin just listening to him in interviews during the winter meetings.
Yeah.
I sensed like, okay, I think they're going to be so much better, because I felt like even though Buster's in charge, this is Bo Mel's ship to run.
Sure.
When it's his clubhouse, it's his team. And I didn't get a feeling that way last year. I felt like he was being scripted pretty much.
A little bit.
More.
Yeah. I think that's fair. He would never admit that.
Right.
He wouldn't. He does. Bob's a class act all around. He's not going to throw anybody under the bus.
Right.
So yeah, but I agree. I think he's being left alone more. And when I say left alone, I don't mean, people charging into his office before the game or after the game, blah, 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 blah. That may have happened a little bit in Oakland, but not, that's not, I think, what maybe held him back a little bit with Farhan and his group. But I think there was a lot of analytics involved. There was a lot of, that was sort of the first ideas to come out. And I think it's a little different now. I think it's more, Yeah, analytics are an important thing, but so are the human beings that we're giving this information to. That's more important. Anyway, so I don't think there's any question Bob is a happy guy this year. And if you look back, Dan, his last couple of years in Oakland, I'm not sure he had a good run with some good teams, but guys started to get traded, and I'm not sure he was happy there his last couple of years. And he really liked being the manager of the A's. I know he did. It was near and dear to his heart. But I think he was maybe ready to go. Goes to San Diego, and that doesn't turn out well at all. He doesn't, the front office there and him didn't see eye to eye. He comes up here, great organization. He knows all about it. He gets it. He's from here. Last year was, maybe a little trial and error for him. So it hasn't, nobody's feeling sorry for him, but it hasn't been a super smooth 4 or 5 year stretch for Bob until now, where I think Buster gets him. He gets Buster. They leave him alone. They give him help if he needs something. They listen to what he has to say. They respect his lineup ideas, go with it. And then he has all the analytical information he needs. So he's in a good spot, if you know what I mean. And
absolutely.
You like as a human being to be in a good spot mentally, right? Just you feel good, you like where you're at. And I think what's going to happen, Dan, and I don't know anything, from an insider standpoint, but I could see the Giants at some point later in the year. He's got a club option for a contract next year to manage. And I could see that being picked up in another year or two added on. Yeah. I don't know.
That would make sense.
I haven't heard that, but
sure would
it
make
makes
sense.
Too much sense, right? You got a good thing going. You got a nice group. You got some veterans. You got some young players. And you got a manager who's just very solid. Right. He's respected. And so if you have that, and it's a veteran manager, he's seen everything. That's the guy you keep, right? You don't let a guy like that
I
go,
think
especially
so.
when you have talent and you have what looks like it's going to be a pretty good team.
I think so, Glenn, because, to me, there's something about stability and the organization really lacks stability the last few years. I talked to some of the players in the off season, and there was a real difficulty with some of the guys just being up and down. Sacramento, Sarah here for the weekend. And then they never felt like they knew what the roles. The Giants haven't made a roster move yet this year. It's early, but let's take a look at some of the past years. We would have had 8-10 different moves. Yeah. I can remember in 22, because I was a season ticket holder. The Giants opened the season at, I want to say it was Miami, and they had the opening day, and then all of a sudden the Marlins are throwing 2 lefties. They bring up Ramos. Yeah. All over KMBR. It was like the Ramos era is finally here. Yeah. We're all excited. And he gets shipped back after 2 or 3. He was only brought up because it was a good pitching matchup. Yeah. And I saw Marco Luciano have his debut last year, and or the year before, 2 years ago. He's got his debut. He comes up, and they're winning, and they pinch hit for him in the 7th inning after he'd already got a hit. And it was this is your number 1 prospect, and it's his debut, and you got a 2-run lead, and you pinch hit for him. And it just sent the message of like, man, do we have any belief in any of these guys? Are we going to just, so I love what Bo Mel's doing. He's pinch hitting in certain situations, but none of this 3rd, 4th inning pulling guys. They're key situations, 6th, 7th inning on. And
I think, and listen, I think a lot of the early pinch hitting and things like, that was, we saw a lot of that with Gabe Kapler. We there was some of it last year, but that's not a Bob thing. He doesn't, he likes to set lineup, or as many guys out there as you can where that they're going to be there. But the thing you brought up, Dan, about the players going up and down and young players, that was without a doubt an issue. And I think it was an issue, obviously, for the players who are the ones getting brought up and sent back down. It's hard. But if you're a young player, you're like, oh, well, what am I supposed to do? But I think it also bothered some of the veteran players that were there that know they're going to be there. Logan Webb knows he's going to be there. Guys like that. But I think they're watching closely as well what the front office is doing. And I don't think that sat real well, with the players that were, weren't going to get sent down. The veteran players, the guys who knew they had a job. I think they saw that and they were like, man, that's not fair. That's hard.
Right.
And I think Bob, and I'm not speaking for Bob, but I'm pretty sure he felt the same way. But how far can you go in saying something to, your bosses, right?
Right.
And I think Buster looked at that, and I don't think he liked it either.
No,
I mean, Buster hasn't been sitting around not watching the Giants the last 3 years. He watches them very close. Well, now he has to because he's in charge, but even before that. And I don't think he liked it. I think as a former player, you know how hard that is on a kid getting brought up, sent down, up, down, or get up, then you don't play, so everybody saw that. And I think that left an impression about the last regime that was running baseball.
Oh, yeah.
That I think, just from how it looked and how it was taken, really put a stain on Farhan and his group and what they were doing. They, for some reason, thought that was the way to do it. I'm sure they had reasons, Dan. And all these things are done for reasons. We may not agree with them, but I think that may have been the one thing that stood out more than anything from a roster transaction standpoint. And I do firmly believe Buster said, you know what? We're not doing that. We're not doing
I think I agree, Glenn. We 2 years ago in the 23 season, we had one of our followers in the chat and been part of the show since its beginning, senior softball games. Guy lives up in Sacramento area, Kelly. He gave a tip and said Buster's moving out here from Georgia before it was even announced anywhere, is that Buster's moving out here and he will eventually take over the Giants. And we were like, whoa. And then it was about a month, 6 weeks later, all of a sudden Buster's decides to move out here. And then I think right then it was set in motion. I really do, because we'll never hear that. We'll never know. But I think Buster says, hey, this isn't the Giants organization that I was brought up in. And I think it was like, it's time to get back in here, watch it from close up. And if 24 season doesn't produce a playoff team, I think it's like he's taken over. And I really firmly believe that. No one will ever convince me otherwise, because he was in Georgia with both sets of families, mom, the wife, and, his wife, Kristen, and Buster's, both sets of parents, grandparents are there. You don't move to San Francisco just to become part of the ownership. You come here with a purpose, and that purpose we're seeing now. And I think we're going to see this team really continue to take on the mold of Buster Posey. I credit the 21 team very much so, the 107 win season, to Buster being there. You look at the 2020 season, he opted out. And then he comes back, and they all of a sudden they win 107 wins. I heard Logan Webb say on a podcast that season they talked about winning the division, and that was Buster's leadership, and they set out to win the division. He said, I never heard that kind of talk ever again here until again this spring training.
Yeah.
And he says, I don't understand why. Well, that's just the mindset. Like Buster has said, he said it the other day on Major League Baseball. What do you guys think you have a shot? And he says, well, I don't know why you go out on the field if you don't think you have a shot.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's
the words of a champion.
Yeah.
That is a championship mentality. And that was lacking. And I think that's a huge difference. Now, talent-wise, let's get into this. We talked about, are the Giants legitimate contenders or are they pretenders? Let's look at if you look at the roster of the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks and the Padres in the division, you'd say, well, Giants don't quite match up. But we both know that games aren't always won on paper, right? And a lot of it has to do with fundamentals, belief. You got to have the talent. But is this team capable of making a run at the division? And if not the division, can it secure a wild card berth this year?
Oh, I mean, the wild card thing, absolutely. Division is going to be difficult. The Dodgers are so talented. I mean, to me, they're so at a different level talent-wise. I think over the course of 162 games, I mean, a lot of things would have to go wrong for them just because they're so overloaded with talent. For one of those three teams that you mentioned, the Giants, the Diamondbacks, or the Padres, to overtake them and win the division, I think that would be difficult. I really do. But that doesn't mean those other three teams aren't good.
Right.
And I predicted, I went on with Marty Lurie, and I go on with Marty all the time. And I said, I think the Giants can win 90 games. And if they win 90 games, they'll get into the postseason. And really,
right,
that's all that matters, Dan. Just
correct.
Get into the postseason, really. Because I mean, a couple of years ago, both wild card teams were in the World Series, right?
Right. I think it was Texas and who did Texas beat? Houston?
Arizona, right?
Arizona. I mean, what am I saying? Houston, same division. Yeah, they beat Arizona. Yeah, Texas lost on the last day of the season.
And I don't have it in front of me, but I have looked at this. If you look back the last 4 years of the World Series, I believe there's 4 or 5 wild card teams that have participated in the World Series. So I don't really care about the winning the division and blah 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 blah. If you do, great. But I do think that they are good enough, they being the Giants, to get in the wild card. I think it's going to be a lot of fun because you are going to be dealing with the Diamondbacks and the Padres, who I think are very good as well.
And probably
and you got the Mets,
Phillies, Mets, and Braves.
The Phillies, and yeah.
So,
but that's fun. Like, I love that. Like, I'm a standings guy. I looked at the standings today for like 15 minutes, and I said to myself, it's the second week of the season. What are you doing?
Oh, you grew up with the
standings.
You grew up like I did. You grew up. You were born in the early 60s, right?
63. Give me a box.
So you're 2 years
right?
younger. Yeah, we had the newspaper. That's all we had.
Yeah. I mean, I do. I look at the scores in the morning. I look at the standings on my phone, and I look at the box scores. I want to see a box score, man. There's nothing better than a baseball box score.
I love out here. It was the Sporting Green or the Oakland Tribune that I grew up on, and we didn't get the box score until the next day. Now you get it. You can watch it as the game's going on, but it was wonderful. I used to study the box scores and then the top 10, they'd put the top 10 average, and then you'd have the home run, and then you'd see all these 300 hitters. I mean, I could remember when the Giants, I was so excited. One year they had Terry Whitfield, Gary Matthews, and I want to say Gary Maddox, all in the top 10 hitting. And I was like, this was exciting. And they were all hitting over 300.
Oh, yeah.
And you watch that every day.
The team averages and all the individual averages were always in the Sunday paper, who was leading the league in hitting. But
the Sunday paper had the full everybody.
Well, and I grew up looking for my brother's name, which was kind of fun, right?
Oh yeah.
You wanted to scroll down, but you didn't want to go too far down, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
oh, there he is. Okay, good. All right. 260.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
Now you're
but
you're about what, 10, 12 years younger than Dwayne?
13.
13. Okay.
He's 13 years older than I am.
Okay. It's interesting. I have, let's see, my oldest was born in 86. So that's going to make her 39 this year. And my youngest is 21. So I've got that kind of gap too.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it was, I don't, and we always tell people, if you think about the age difference, when he went to college, I went to kindergarten. So right, he's 18 while I'm 5. So I don't really remember growing up with him. I don't really remember him being in the house or being in high school. I remember little bits and pieces of things, but he was always the guy who came home, right, from college, or he was always gone, but I always looked forward to him coming home. But
now, did you play ball growing up in high school yourself too, or
I
college?
played in high school, college, and I played in the minor leagues for 2 years.
Did you really? I didn't realize that. What organization were you with?
I was with the Padres for a year in 1985 in Spokane, Washington.
Okay.
And 1986, I was with the Cardinals in Erie, Pennsylvania. So
wow. Now, what were you a second baseman?
Middle infielder.
Middle infielder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Didn't quite have what it takes, but that's okay. It was a lot. I had a fun 2 years in the minor leagues.
You went a lot further than about 99% of the population, or I mean, that's pretty amazing.
It was fun. It was fun. There's some people that I played with that made it to the big leagues, which is always fun. But it was. I always tell people it was a long time ago and 35 pounds ago. That's what I tell people.
My playing weight, I think I'm a good 50, over 40 at least. But now, this, as we look back at this, this team, as you say, it could definitely be a wild card contender and win 90 games.
Absolutely.
I picked him 86, just looking at it. My biggest concern, if I had to point out concerns going into the season, and it's similar to what I said last year, and we saw a little bit of it Monday and Tuesday night, was the lack of, hitting where guys are, and they didn't really strike out a ton this week. They just didn't score, but they do have a tendency to double-digit strikeout guys like Adames and Chapman and Ramos and Yaz and Fitzgerald. There's 5 guys I just named right there that all can strike out 25% or more of the time. You get Wade, sometimes he's up over that 20%. Their contact guys really in the entire organization are Lee, Flores, and Matos. Those are the 3 guys that pretty much put, bat on ball the majority of the time. They don't have that high K rate. That's my one concern with the team, is if they get into that funk. Is there anything that you see that could cause them to, go into a skid of losing 7, 8 out of 10?
Yeah. I mean, I think the strikeout thing, I think it's a legitimate concern, Dan, but I don't think they're trying to mask anything. I think the Giants, the coaches in the front office, they look at the players they have and they realize, listen, we got guys who are going to strike out. Most teams actually have quite a few guys who are going to strike out. But in kind of listening and talking to Pat Burrell in spring training, and the feeling I got, and Pat kind of said this to me, he said, listen, we're going to strike out, but let's try to eliminate striking out in key spots, right? Because no matter what happens, this is, like you said, you have guys that have swing and miss in them, and they just do. But let's work on not swinging and missing when there's a guy on third and less than 2 outs. So make it more situational. Work hard on putting it in play. So it's almost like, don't worry about the total amount of strikeouts, but worry about when you strike out, if that makes any sense. And I know that may seem like, well, but how is that going to be different than last year? Well, I think if let's concentrate on situations where we really need to put the ball in play.
Yeah, they've been doing pretty well league-wise, hitting with runners in scoring position with 2 outs. I don't know if they still are, but at one point a few games ago, they were leading the majors.
Yeah. I mean, so like that situation there in the early going, they've been better with runners in scoring position. You're not going to cure the problem. I think last year, the major league average for getting a runner home from third with less than 2 outs, and this is a bugaboo for me because you see that guy out there, you're like, just put it in play, right? Yeah. But I think it's like 52% last year, give or take, educated guess, 52 or 53%. So really, it's only getting that guy home half the time at the major league level. So if you can be better than that, well, then, I think that's your goal. But yeah, you're going to see strikeouts. That's just. Now
I got a question for you.
You said the names, and you're right.
I got a question for you.
Yeah,
the Giants. A lot of people, including myself, think they're missing that one bat in the lineup that pitchers fear. Mm-hmm. Like, oh gosh, we got to deal with him. Not every team has him. But you saw, when you were with the A's in the American League, you saw Luis Robert in 23. I think it was the 22, 23. He was one of the better ball players in baseball. Now, he's had a down year last year. The White Sox were awful, and they look like they might be worse. They're on a trajectory to win. Actually, I looked at the other day. They're on the trajectory right now to lose 130 games at their current percentage. The White Sox, I don't see any reason for them to keep him and then take his contract. They have club option years the next 2 years after this. So anybody that gets Luis Robert has control of him for 2+ years after this year. So I'm thinking, and he's got an injury history. The White Sox seem to be holding on to him. If they hold on to him long enough and he gets hurt, they're probably going to walk away with nothing because they'll have to decide to pay him the bigger money.
Yeah.
If you're the Giants, is that a player that has any allure to you and the team and the Giants?
I would say yes, because from what I understand, and I heard this from quite a few different people, the Giants did look into Luis Robert in the offseason. So I think there was some conversations there between the Giants and the White Sox. And then, teams call about a lot of different players, but I think the Giants like him enough that they did look into possibly acquiring him, or what would it take to get him this past offseason. So then that they like the player. Okay. So there's no reason to think that maybe they revisit it. I think if you look at what you have, you're not going to do anything in center field because Lee's going to be here, and Lee looks like he's a pretty good player. So he's here. And I know that's where Robert plays, and he's very good in the outfield. You have a young left fielder in Ramos, who I think you want to keep.
Right.
Your right field situation, Yaz is off to a good start. I think we know what kind of player Yaz is. He's a really good, solid player.
Yeah.
But he's a free agent, so maybe that's where you think about this a little bit, Dan, where Yaz is a free agent. He may not be back next year. So you may have an opening in right field. Well, you may then turn to me and say, well, wait a minute, we got Matos. It's like, well, right. Matos is probably what you're going to have to give up.
Correct. I agree.
And not just Matos. You're probably going to have to go Matos and, one of these young pitchers. Or
Yeah, maybe
Robert's having a
Harrison or
good year.
something like that.
Exactly.
Or something. Yeah.
So
I put together a deal the other day, and that's what it would take about Harrison.
If he's having a
Matos.
good year, if he's having a big year, Robert, then I think you're going to, but I don't think it's a terrible idea because, listen, you get him out there this year wherever. Maybe he's in right, maybe he has DHs, maybe they move. I don't know. They move people around, but looking into the future, maybe Yaz isn't back next year, and maybe a guy like that is your right fielder, right? So,
right.
I don't think it's a terrible idea. He is a little injury prone, and there's a little inconsistency there. He's a strikeout guy as well, but he's immensely talented. And knowing that, from what I was told, the Giants did look at him in the offseason, it makes for an interesting.
Yeah, I think
it's another right-handed hitter, Dan. If you want to get into the right-left thing, I think perfect scenario if you want to look into the future.
Kyle Tucker
is a big banger that hits from the left side. Like, I think
Kyle Tucker.
Yeah. I mean, that would have probably been the ultimate guy. And I know the Giants, talked to the Astros about him, but that's the kind of guy like, okay, I get it, but
we know he's going to be at least 500 million.
Yeah. He's going to get major dollars and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a terrible idea at all because it would not only help you this year, but you'd be set in your outfield for a while.
At least for the next
if you were able to keep Ramos and not have to trade him,
Right.
So that's pretty good outfield. So.
Yeah, no, and I'm really impressed with Jung-Hoo Lee and what can you say about Wilmer Flores' start? He's now got 5 homers and he's hitting in key situations.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of the Giants using him as a DH and not putting him in the field to protect his legs. He's got, some age on him and he's had some lower extremity injuries. If you can keep him more in the lineup when you need him. And I really like the idea. I don't know how you feel about this, but I really like the idea of them putting Casey Schmidt, who plays an excellent third base. Now he's just got to learn a different hot corner and some other responsibilities, obviously, that come with first base, holding runners on and all of that. But, I played a little first base in ball, but the weird thing to me was the glove. I just didn't like wearing a first base. It just felt too long and skinny.
Because it is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm used to a nice big outfielder's glove, I played center field.
Is that legal size?
This, I don't know. This
looks like one of those super big gloves that fans have in the stand.
Oh yeah. I think it is a legal size, but this is probably now. I got it for softball because
it looks like the Coke. It looks like the glove of the Coke bottle.
Yeah, it's pretty big. It's probably a softball glove. Maybe those are a little bit bigger.
It's bigger than your head, Dan. That's the biggest glove I've ever seen.
It is a pretty good sized glove, but the first baseman's glove is something different to get used to for players that have never
especially
played.
at that level. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Casey deserves a lot of credit. Casey's a very good defender. He's terrific. So I think the Giants feel like, listen, I saw a lot of his at bats in spring trade. Again, he's starting to bat really well. He looks better. He looks better. So I think the Giants felt like, hey, let's see if this kid can play first base. He's a good athlete. He's a good defender. Let's get him to see if he can learn first base, because if he can, he's got a chance to get in the lineup. And if you're Casey Schmidt, you're looking at third base going, no, that's not happening. You're looking at short going, no, that's not happening. And if it does happen, that means somebody's hurt.
Right.
Second base, I think the Giants are saying, we want Fitzgerald to succeed. We're going to give him a long look and hope that he's, I think he's starting to feel a little more comfortable now.
Yeah.
After a little bit of a slow start. But so I like the idea too. And for Wilmer is a DH now.
Exactly.
In a
And
pinch, you can play him at first. Absolutely. I mean,
right.
but I think to keep him at his healthiest, and now it's like you need this guy because he's such a good hitter, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep him at DH, and when you want to play, when you got a lefty on the mound and you want to play Schmidt, yeah, I think it's a really good move by the Giants.
I do too. I didn't even think of it in the offseason. I kept saying, why don't they put Marco Luciano in the offseason and let him learn first base?
Yeah.
Because he should be able to learn it as a shortstop. You should be able to learn footwork and be able to, scoop balls out of the dirt. And you're doing that at second base on the steal attempts and throws. And, you got to find a spot for Marco. There really isn't anywhere for him on this team right now. But he still needs to prove it. He needs to prove himself at AAA level that he can, rake down there and tear up that league and push the envelope, so to speak, for the Giants to bring him up. And that isn't happening right now. So we'll see where that goes. But I do like the fact that, with Casey, I talked to him in the offseason quite a bit, and he was just like, oh man, I don't really care where I play. I just don't, because I said, where are you going to play, short, second? And he had a couple different gloves. He was on this show talking about the different gloves he had bought in the offseason. I don't think he ever even thought about first base, but the one thing he was clear about, he says, I just don't want to go to Sacramento. I don't want to,
sure.
I just want to play, give it, and I'm glad that he's getting the shot. But Aaron says, I kick myself not thinking about him playing first. It's a lot. If you think about it, a guy that can play third base, it's a natural spot to play if there's not an, other spot on the diamond available. Yeah. So I got a few.
Yeah. The only thing, Dan, is learning a position at the big league level is it's almost unfair. Right. Because think about that, learning a position at the big league level, and to Schmidt's credit, he there's a couple plays in Houston where he didn't make, but he made a really nice play the other day, coming in, throwing a guy out at the plate. Not an easy play. So I think as time goes on, he's going to get better and better. Lamont's a good first baseman. Lamont Wade has turned into a really good defensive first baseman. So you don't want to have too much of a, that's one of your things, Dan. The Giants play good defense. They have good defenders at every position. If you look around, they have good defenders there. Ramos is good. Their outfield is really so.
Well, they've got four potential Gold Glovers. They've got two already in Chapman and Bailey, but I would say they got two other potential Gold Glovers in Lee and Yastrzemski.
Yeah, Yaz is a candidate every year, and Lee's a really good center fielder. And when I go to the games, a lot of times I sit up in a booth, and when you're up above in a booth, you really see what kind of jumps outfielders get. He gets
great jumps, Lee.
Yeah. So you don't see that on TV.
Right.
And if you're sitting in the stands, there's a lot going on, you're talking or whatever. But when you're up above in a booth and looking out, that's where you see it. He gets great jumps. Very seldom does he break in or back or
Yeah, he did it the other night. He broke back and had to come in and made the diving catch. But I pointed that out the last week. I said, I haven't seen a center fielder in a long time with the Giants get as good a jumps, because that was my position I played. And you see everything right in front of you. And if you have that ability to break back when the ball's hit good over your head, I mean, you're way ahead of the game because you're taking off immediately. Yeah. And it is something, obviously some people get fooled by the swing and the sound of the, but
that happens to the great ones, it happens occasionally. Giants defense is good. They're going to be good all year. It's just there's too many good defensive players out there to not be a good defensive team. So I think that's going to be a big plus for them. And Schmidt will be fine at first. Just be patient with him and give him another month to keep working and get some game action and get that speed of the game. But he's such a good athlete. and a good defender already. So you don't have to turn him into a good defender. You just have to make him a good defender at a new position.
Right.
And they'll do that, and he'll be fine.
Yeah. A couple of questions from the chat here. David Robertson, not on a major league team. What do you think's going on there?
Just, I was reading an article about it today. One of the national writers said, David Robertson, how can he not be on a major league team? That was the question, which is surprising because, bullpens now have 8 guys in them, right? And it's hard to imagine that there's not a team out there that doesn't have a spot, right?
You're talking 240 guys.
Yeah. And Robertson, I know he's been around a long, long time. And you may not ask him to be your closer now, but this is a veteran guy. It's good to have some veteran guys in the bullpen. So it is a surprise.
Another question here for
you.
Is
it a money thing? Probably not.
Yeah. Manny, not the Manny Machado, but our Manny Machado. Should the Giants move Jung-Hoo to the leadoff, and what do you see in the struggles with Adames at the plate?
No, I would not. I know there's a lot of time. I like Lee in the third spot. They're not a team that has a whole bunch of bombers, right?
Right.
They don't have a bunch of guys who are going to hit 35 home runs. So you have to think about the construction of the lineup. I love Lee third. I love him a lot there because he puts the ball in play and he can drive the ball. We've seen him drive the ball. I mean, he's not a slap hitter. So I'm good. I like, Wade's going to get going. He's really been struggling, but he's going to get going. We've seen him get hot. So, and Bob's not, listen, they've played 12 games. So, you don't really start making lineup changes. I don't think. And as far as, Willie goes, listen, I think he's probably pressing a little bit. Not uncommon for a guy who has a big contract and it's the first year. He has shown a little frustration the last couple days, which he's not a guy that generally does that. But this guy is such a glue guy.
Right.
It's really hard to define how important he is to this team in the clubhouse and the dugout. And I know fans want to see home runs and RBIs, right? And I get it. So do I. But there's a lot more to a guy like Willie Adames. It's one of the reasons he got $180 million. So I think he's probably, pressing a little bit. And too, Dan, sometimes a day off and going on the road can make a big difference for a player, even a veteran guy. I know that sounds silly, right? But you want to do good in front of your home fans for the first time. He's a human being, right?
Right.
You want to be awesome, so he gets the winning hit on opening day and super cool, right? But you want to do well. You want to show the home fans, hey, I'm a good player and I'm worth the money. And sometimes you get a little frustrated if you're struggling, which he is, but that day off and then you got a nice long road trip, that can make a difference. And at some point, I mean, this is Willie Adames. He's a really, really good player. And at some point he's going to go and he's going to get a bunch of big hits. He had 32 homers last year, 112 RBIs. He may not get that this year. Who knows? Maybe he will. But I would say to the person who dropped that question, Willie Adames should be the least of your worries if you're worried about the Giants as a team. Because he will go at some point, just like Wade will get going. And then when they get hot, a couple guys will get cold. And then we'll be worried about them, Dan, right?
Right.
It's just the way it is. It's the way
speaking of Willie Adames, Glenn, I was home with Larry Krueger opening day. How's our play-by-play here as we were doing an in-game live, and Larry decided to take a chug for the
okay. All right.
Here we go. Let's give this a go.
Maybe I should slam the beer now as a motivational thing. Should I slam it as a motivational?
Sure. You might not get a chance to slam it Here we go, everybody. Look at this. Adamas is going to come through now because Larry has 3, 2, 1. Let's get the foam. Got to get the foam. There we go.
I did what I can do. I can do no more.
There it is.
There we go.
Oh, yeah, that's the plate coming at the plate. Here comes the throw. He's tight.
Hey!
Willie
Oh!
Thomas.
Yes. Yes.
There it is. So
Larry looked like he had a few too many Zimas.
Yeah, he had a few. So I was doing a little play-by-play there, having some fun. As
Yeah, it wasn't bad, Dan. I mean, I would say, you're probably not quite there yet, but you're
a little too excited there. And
you know what?
The funny
you know
part
what
was
they always said, Dan. You know what? I and my brother Dwayne told me this. When I started doing play-by-play, he said, "Listen," he said, "you can do 8 innings, be fine, call the game, do a good job, but don't ever miss the big moments." Right? You can be average calling 8 innings of baseball if you want. But when something big happens, be ready to do your thing. And it makes perfect sense. And nobody hits the big moment. I'm biased, obviously. Dwayne hits the big moments as good as anybody.
He does.
And I learned that from him.
All-time.
All-timer, don't screw up the big moment.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that matters, right? If you got to walk
You were
off
great
hit,
with the A's. My brother Ron, who owns the yogurt shack there in Danville.
I love Ron.
Big, he was with the A's, season ticket holder for years behind the plate. And in fact, it was the 2019, maybe it was the 17 season. Yeah. He got us down on the field with Giants A's game.
Okay.
Because he knows Bob. And then of course he knows all of a sudden Pam
Pitts.
Pam Pitts went to high school with Pam at Clayton Valley. So Pam gets us tickets and we go down on the field and we're there for, batting practice. And my brother Ronnie introduces us to Bomel, and I'm in Giants gear and my mom is, and my brother Ron is wearing A's and his wife's A's. And my brother Ron says, "Oh, here, they went to the dark side, and Bomel funnily says, I can see. But anyway, it was just kind of fun seeing all that. But you were fantastic announcer with the A's, and
thank you.
I didn't watch as many A's games as Giants games, but I really enjoyed listening to you and Ray, the great late Ray.
I know.
And
I miss him every day.
Well, he was fantastic, and of course Dallas. But you guys were fantastic. But I got to say, your brother's calls, and he did it again yesterday with the home run call.
Yeah, he hit it. He hit it good yesterday. Yeah.
I mean, he knew it. I mean, when they're no doubters, it's is it easier to make the call when it's a no doubter?
It is. It is. There's nothing worse. Well, the one problem is if it's a potential, maybe walk-off home run, but you're not sure if it's going out, because then you can't really go into your home run call, because if it doesn't go out, then you look really bad, and then you screwed up the big moment, So there's an art to it. But that was the advice I always used was, don't worry about innings 1 through 8, but if something big happens, don't miss it. Don't miss it.
That's great advice.
Be good on that one play, because that's the only play that's anybody's going to remember in that game. And I always remember that, So if there was a potential walk-off, you sit up in your seat a little bit, and all of a sudden you just take a deep breath and be ready for that big moment, because you don't want to screw it up, and you don't want to miss it. So
we'll get ready to get out of here at the end here. We got close it with this Robert Rothberg, who's Robert's from New York, and he is the ultimate Giants fan. He's been saying the Giants are the team to beat for the last 3 years. He's never had nothing. I always tell Robert, I said, man, you'd be the best dad to ever have, because if you mess up as a son, you'd have Robert over there saying, it's okay, son.
Yeah.
I believe in you and you're going to get it. And so Robert says, please ask about Doval. What's your take on Camilo Doval? And before you do, I'll just tell you my quick take.
Yeah.
My quick take is that you can't use him in high leverage situations until he proves himself in lower leverage situations.
I think that's fair. Yeah. And listen, we talked about this earlier in the show about how I think you're going to see fewer roster moves this year. I think there's with Buster being a player and understanding the difficulty of the game, I think there's going to be more patience with players. Fans may not like that, but I think it's the right thing to do. I think you need to be patient with Doval. It's hard to be because you're seeing, you saw his struggles last year, and then he looked really good in spring training, and he looked good his first couple outings here, but then the last 2 outings, not so great. So you saw a little bit of what you saw last year. So your frustration kind of, comes back to life. But I think they'll be patient with him to a point. And listen, if it's May 15th or toward the end of May and he's still walking people, then you're going to see a change. You can't afford, just can't afford letting games get away. I mean, but they will let him try to work through this. And because when he's good, he's an all-star. So you gotta think about that. Right. And you have a good closer in Walker. So you don't have to throw Doval in the 9th inning, right? You have other guys who could close if you have to. So maybe you back him off a little bit. But to get a guy right, you can't let him sit out in the bullpen for a week and not pitch. So that's the hard part. That's the hard part for Bob Melvin is you got to find a spot for him. But is pitching in a 10-0 game going to help him? Or so it's tough because you want to get him in there because the only way to get him straightened out is to get him in there.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I think they'll be careful with him somewhat, because they're going to try to get him back on track. And listen, it was 2 bad outings. It just happened to be 2 in a row, right?
Right. My take on him is bring him in situations where the Giants are down 3 runs or more, or up by 3 or more.
Yeah.
And just get him back to building up his confidence. And, because if he's right, the Giants have a potent back into the bullpen.
And they know that. That's why they're going to be patient with him. And, maybe get some bullpen sessions in with him. But, and he's not a guy either, Dan, that, some relievers, Rodriguez is one, Trevino's another one, where Bob likes those guys to be, he can bring them in the middle of an inning if things are getting weird, right? Doval's not a guy you bring in the middle of an inning. He's a guy that starts an inning, and that's the difference between, relievers. You see Rodriguez coming in quite a bit.
Oh, right.
Now.
Yeah. He's the fireman. Yeah. He's the fireman. Yeah. He puts out the fires. Right.
Yeah. So,
right. Well, it's been great.
I think everybody has to realize that with Buster, there's going to be a little more of a patience thing, I think, with players, and let them see if they can work through it.
And I like that. And that fits Buster's personality. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. As I mentioned, he moved out here in 23 to get back involved. He didn't take over after the 23 season.
Yeah.
He sat back, he watched more, and he jumped in, and so I think it's this team is definitely taking on his personality, Bo Mel's personality, and I think they're somewhat similar. Both catchers, both been successful. in the game and at high levels. And, I think it was Bomel's first year, won 93 games with Seattle, had a rough year, and then came to Oakland. He had 2 97-win teams back-to-back years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, shoot, he would have won a lot more if the A's kept their players, but
that would have helped the situation. Yeah.
that would have helped.
Well, the problem too is they not only did they trade these good players, but they didn't get much back. That was the problem.
Right.
But,
Yeah. Well, Glenn, it's been great having you. We
Dan.
loved having you on the show. Anytime you're available, we'd love to have you back. Your knowledge of baseball is immense, and we really do appreciate you coming on to NorCal Sports Network. You got any final words of wisdom you could give to the crowd out there?
I gave you everything I had, Dan.
Okay.
No, it was great. And say hi to your brother for me, all right?
I will do that. And thanks again for joining. Hey, everybody, we'll be back tomorrow night after Giants-Yankees post-game. First pitch, I believe, is 4:05, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to look that up right now. Tomorrow, 4:05. So probably be on about 6:30 to 6:45, somewhere in that neighborhood tomorrow night. And Giants take on the Yankees for 3, then head to Philadelphia and back here in California. They finish up the 10-game road trip against Anaheim. Anaheim, they're Anaheim to me. They're still the Anaheim Angels. I can't get used to the. I mean, I remember when they were the California Angels. But anyway, thanks to everybody for watching. For Glen Kuiper and myself, Dan, Coach Emilio, we will see you tomorrow night. Take care. On here. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button on the way out, everybody.